we gotta say hi to someone special.
Hi, someone special.
1, 2, 3. Nice. And we need to pick some colors. We have some choices today. We have this one. We have this one. We have this one. We have this one. Brace yourself. We have this one. Brace yourself. We have this one. And finally, this one. 3, 2, 1. That was probably not going to win. 3, 2, 1. That one was pretty decent. Lots of views on that one. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. And 3, 2, 1. All right. It's for sure the black one. Here we go. All right. Hey. Turn in your, sorry, purple people. Turn in your Bibles to Ephesians 4. We're doing verses 14 through 16. Some of you guys, Ephesians 4, turn there. Some of you guys like sermon titles, and so this sermon is titled Spoils of, you guessed it, War. Part 3. Very nice. Spoils of War, Part 3. This is the last sermon in the Spoils of War series. And if you remember, Ephesians 1 and Ephesians 2, Paul comes out swinging. He says, hey, God has chosen. God's choice. And this choice is also in tandem with God's power, and through God's choice of electing people and through his power of saving people in spite of ourselves and against all odds, through these things now we see things like forgiveness, and we see salvation, and we see hope and love, and we see redemption. All of these epic things now in Ephesians 1 and 2, how great and glorious this story is. The story that began in eternity past. Paul goes, this now collides with the church. Mysteries are revealed to the church and to Christians, and all these incredible things. And now Paul goes, you take all of this, and you need to now walk, worthy. Good. Yeah, someone like, yes. You need to walk worthy of the calling with which you have been called. And the question is, now how do I do that? Right? I got this stuff. It's in my brain. I understand it. And now Paul goes, now you don't just understand it. Now you need to live it out. You need to conduct your life in a way that puts these truths on display. That's what you need to do now. And the question is, how exactly do I do that? And so this brings us, and this has brought Paul to the discussion of unity. And he says this person right here in the church, that they need to be smiling and loving this person in the church. And this person is loving this person and this person to this person and this person to this person and this person. This person has a body for some reason. And this person, and it's all just this. That the church really does come together. And that it becomes something that is not just unique, not just something that is different, but it really does become something that is new. That they really do, that the church really is a new humanity, that the church really is a holy temple, and that the church really does proclaim that there is a return to the garden, of Eden, and that God is working, he's working through his people, and now that's how we walk worthy. But you're like, okay, I get that we need to be unified, but how do I become unified with somebody? You don't know some of the people in my small group. You don't know some of the people that have wronged me. I had this one conversation with this one girl, and she was mean to me, and now I can't even talk to her in youth group, and I haven't talked to her for years. How do I actually be unified with people and proclaim all of this and walk worthy and display all these things? And Paul goes, okay, I'll show you how you're unified. And this brings us to the discussion of spiritual gifts. And when we talk about spiritual gifts, we're really talking about how do you love people within the church. Look, Christ has had victory, that he stood up, that he went to war against sin and death, that he conquered, and now he takes those spoils of war and now he gives them to his own. Now we proclaim certain things, and so we talked about spiritual gifts like teaching. And what are some other ones? Hospitality. What are some other ones? Generosity, very nice. I'll do giving / generosity.
Serving.
Nice. Serving's definitely on there. Surfboarding. Nope, that's not on there. All right, there's all these kinds of spiritual gifts, whether it's encouraging, whether it's leadership, all right, all of these things, spiritual gifts, that you take these things and that now you love others, you choose them above yourself, and now you use this to become unified. That you love this person and you serve them, or you're generous to them, or you teach them, or you exhort them. You do all of these things so that all of this can play out, and so that all of this can be proclaimed in your life, so that you actually do walk worthy. Paul goes, it's all stitched together. And last time we saw that one of the other components that makes this whole thing work are not just spiritual gifts and spoils of war, but also gifted what? Leaders. Gifted leaders. That's spelled right. Gifted leaders. Yikes, not my best moment. Gifted leaders. Let's play Guess That Elder. Try to guess which elder. This guy has glasses. Guess which. Ooh, he's not cross-eyed, but he looks like this guy. And he has, I'll give you a hint. That's a guitar. Upstairs.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Kugler.
Yeah, Craig Kugler. CK. All right. Now guess this elder. He kind of has some facial hair. And yeah, he talks about Jeeps a lot. Jeeps. GG. Greg Gifford. Now guess. Okay. Try to guess this guy. He has an axe.
What?
Mike Metro, because he's a retired firefighter. There he goes. All right, this is the easiest one of the day. Guess this guy. Yeah, it's our boy, Pastor Steve. Look at how tall he is. Unbelievable. All right, look. Behind our church, there are gifted leaders. And what these gifted leaders do is that they are tasked with equipping. They are tasked with equipping us, and that they love us first, that they serve us first, and that they are tasked with helping us learn the faith, as in what do we even believe to begin with. They help give us knowledge. They help mature us so that we become a whole and complete person. And they also help us attain to the measure, that we measure up and that we measure to whose standard? God. More specifically, Jesus's, Christ's standard. Very good. And so these guys behind every healthy church is healthy leadership. And this spells leaders right there that you didn't know. And so they come here and they help you do all of this. And now you're equipped and now you're mature. And now you can love properly. And then the church can be unified. And then we can walk worthy. And then we really can become a trophy where we display the victory and the power and the might of God. And now whenever people see us, now whenever people see the church, they really do see God. And they really do see what he has accomplished in human history. And so whenever you look at the spoils of war, it all comes together. It's all beautiful. And it all reminds us, hey, God loved us. God loved us. God calls us to walk worthy and to love him. We're to use our spiritual gifts to love others and to be united with other believers in our body. And gifted leaders care for us and love us. And look, we are so blessed to have elders, to have deacons, to have small group leaders, people who really do care, people who really are working hard and laboring to invest in you. Paul goes, that's the spoils of war at work. That's what God and Christ have accomplished. Such a beautiful picture, and it all fits together, and you go, man, Christ has conquered sin and death. And the church becomes a first fruit. It becomes a taste of all the things that God has accomplished. And now, what Paul does, look at Ephesians 4, look at verse 14. Look at this. He says, as a result. This is what Paul does now. Paul's like, hey, did you get this? Yeah? And you nod your head, right? You get this? Paul goes, all right, great, you got all that? Now take all of this. Take all of this, and as a result, he's dealing with outcome. He goes, look, this is what needs to happen now. This next section, these verses are dealing with the now what question. You're like, okay, I got all that. Right? I care about unity. I care about spiritual gifts. I'm thankful for gifted leaders. I want to walk worthy. I want to become like a trophy that displays what God has done. But now what? I mean, get practical. Get down to the nitty-gritty, all right? And what exactly needs to be the outcome? And Paul says two things. The first thing is this. The first thing is this, that we need to grow out. Paul says, now what? Here's what. Grow out. Look at verse 14. As a result, take all of this now, and this is what needs to happen next. We are no longer to be children. Because you need to grow out of being this idea of children, and we kind of already intuitively get this, but children has the idea of someone who's an infant, like a little precious Jenny, okay, to maybe some of you have siblings that are in elementary school, all right? That's the idea of an infant. And this is kind of a slam, because children are kind of dumb. You know what I mean? That's kind of what's going on here. You're like, ooh, you shouldn't have said that. Let me give you an illustration. When I was a kid, you guys know I'm a quarter Japanese. My mom's half Japanese. So before I used utensils, I was using chopsticks. And so I'm a little guy. I can't even talk. My dad hands me chopsticks. And what do I do with the chopsticks? I ram them up my nose as hard as I can as a kid. And my dad's like, why would this kid do it? So they rush me to the ER. And it's like, boogers are supposed to come out of your nose, not chopsticks. Why did that happen? Because I was a child. Another story. When I was a child, I'd go to my grandparents' house, and we would see Santa Claus. Incredible. Santa Claus looked just like my grandpa. He talked just like my grandpa. He kind of would hunch over. My grandpa had great hair. Santa Claus had the same hair as my grandpa. My grandpa couldn't grow a beard, but man, this Santa Claus that looked and sounded and walked just like my grandpa, he had a fake beard on. And you know what I thought as a kid? What a coincidence. Never as a kid did I go, man, I think my grandpa's pretending to be Santa Claus. Never once happened. Here's the idea of little kids. They have a childish understanding. They're just inexperienced. Sometimes they're foolish more often than not. They lack insight. They lack understanding. They can't perceive, and they're gullible. Okay? And now Paul goes, if you know all this, if you believe all of this, then you need to grow out of that spiritually. Some of you spiritually are shoving chopsticks up your nose. Some of you spiritually are like, my grandpa is Santa Claus. And we laugh at it, but Paul goes, you have to grow out of that. You can't live your life as a spiritual child. That phase, it needs to be just a phase, right? How crazy would it be if you're a professing believer and then you live the next 30 years shoving spiritual chopsticks up your nose, living like a spiritual child? That would be crazy. You need to move on. And Paul's like, you need to move on. And look at how devastating it is here, not growing out and remaining as a spiritual child. Look at the rest of verse 14. Tossed here and there by waves and carried about by every wind of doctrine, by the trickery of men, by craftiness in deceitful schemings. Very vivid language. Paul's like, if you don't grow out, this is what you are. This is where you are. This is what happens. You're just right here, and you're drowning. and the wave comes and it crashes against you, and now you go this way, and then, oh my goodness, there's another wave, and now you go crashing this way, and there's a bigger wave, and it comes crashing this way, and there's a bigger wave now, and it crashes this way, and you just keep getting tossed back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and Paul goes, that's what will happen. That's what will happen if you remain a spiritual child. And notice here, notice what these waves are. These waves are carried about by every wind of doctrine, by the trickery of men, by craftiness in deceitful scheming. This stuff happens because of false teaching. And if you're a spiritual child, guess what? You can't perceive what false teaching is. This happens because of false teachers. And there's trickery, and there's villainy. I don't know if that's a word or not, but it is now. There's deception, scheming, craftiness, all of this stuff. This is what happens whenever you don't have the ability to perceive, to discern false teachers. And let me be very clear when we talk about false teachers. When a false teacher is never going to walk up to you, shake your hand, and go, hey, you know who I am? I'm a false teacher. Never going to happen because they're crafty, because they're scheming. Sometimes there are false teachers, and they don't even know that they're false teachers. Sometimes false teachers aren't just adults. Sometimes false teachers could even be your friends. Think about that for a second, okay? Paul goes, if you are spiritually immature, then you don't have the ability to perceive. You don't have the ability to actually filter out what is right and what is wrong. Yes, you have to be really, really careful. Every wind of doctrine. Sometimes, Arthur, hey, pay attention. Sometimes, maybe you'll believe something. Maybe one day you'll just believe something that's weird. And then the next day you come to church and you're like, yeah, I don't believe it anymore. Maybe one day someone talks to you and you're like, man, you know what? I guess transgenderism, I guess that's not a thing. I guess it's just whatever. Maybe one day you're like, someone talks to you and you go, oh, okay. And they have this kind of case for homosexuality and you're like, yeah, you know what? I think people should just be happy and everything's okay. And you just go down the line and whatever it is, whether it's drugs or getting drunk or swearing or partying, whatever it is, you just get tossed back and forth and back and forth. And you get tossed back and forth because you're a spiritual child. Okay? Paul goes, you need to grow out of that. Not only do you need to grow out of that, but you also need, and this is the second and final thing, you also need to grow up. You also need to grow up. You grow out of something, but you also grow up and into something else. And look at verse 15. By speaking the truth in love, we are to grow up in every way or in all aspects into him who is the head, even Christ. If the question is, hey, I get all of this stuff and I want to grow out and I want to be able to, become mature and I want to understand these things. I want to be rooted and grounded and know what I believe and be able to live the kind of life that honors God. But how exactly do I grow up? If the question is how, Paul says the answer is very simple. It's by speaking the truth in love. That is the how. That is one of the mechanisms by which you can actually grow up into maturity. By speaking the truth in love. This phrase is loaded. And if you are able to speak the truth in love, that presumes a lot of things. And let's break this down. If you can speak the truth in love, that means that you actually know what the truth is. Okay, so if you're taking notes, that's the first thing. If you can speak the truth in love, point one, that you know the truth. Second thing, if you can speak the truth in love, that also means that you love the truth. And it means that you want to now communicate the truth. And the third thing is this, if you speak the truth in love, that also means that you not just know it and love it and communicate it, but now you can communicate it in a way that's actually loving. Actually loving. Loving has the idea of choosing that person above yourself, where you love that person and you actually want to seek their highest good. And Paul goes, if you want to become mature, if you want to grow up, then this is one of the mechanisms, this is the how-to. He gives you the playbook, and he goes, begin speaking the truth in love. in a way that's gentle, in a way that's loving, that you actually seek this person's good. And if you see somebody in the church that's doing something wild, then what do you do now? You speak the truth in love. This person believes this thing over here, and what do you do now? Now you speak the truth in love, and you help ensure that this works. And you also ensure that you're doing this with the help of all of these guys and your small group leaders and the elders and the deacons, and then we really are walking worthy. Paul goes, you have to speak the truth in love. And look at the next phrase here. Verse 15. But speaking the truth in love, we are to grow up in all aspects. So every kind of, spiritual, in all areas of spiritual life. And we grow up into him who is the head, even Christ. Paul goes, when you do this, this is what happens. Now look, before you were just this little guy here, and you were getting tossed around, and it was crazy. But whenever this begins to happen, then it's almost like, whenever Mario gets a mushroom, and then what happens? Can someone do the sound? What Brendan did. I can't do it as good as you. But Mario takes a mushroom, and now you grow up, and now you are like this. And it's not just that you're like this, but you begin matching the measure again. It's the same metaphor as before, where now, if this is Christ, now you begin actually looking like Christ. And after all, this is what Christ did all the time. And now Paul goes, that's what you do now. That's what you do. Grow up, become a spiritually mature person. Great. Last verse. Look at verse 16. Look at verse 16. What Paul does for verse 16, he kind of zooms out now. Before you were zooming in and you were looking at all of this crazy stuff here, and before you were zooming in and looking at, okay, in contrast to this, there's this over here, and I get that I need to speak the truth in love. I get what that means, that I need to know the truth and love the truth and communicate the truth and say it in a way that's actually loving, and I need to grow up and look like Christ. But now what Paul does is he zooms out again. One final time he goes, let me just remind you of this whole picture here. And that's what this last verse is doing. Verse 16. From whom? Who's the whom there? Easy. Yeah, Christ. From whom? Paul goes, it's not just that Christ is the goal. Is Christ the goal? To look like Christ? Is that what we should be all about? Is that how you walk? Of course. But it's not just the goal. Paul now says Christ is also the source. Christ is the one who makes all of this actually happen. And look at this verse here. Look at verse 15. From whom the whole body, being fitted and held together. That phrase, do you guys see that? It might say, I don't know what other translations are doing. Being fitted and held together by what every joint supplies. That is architectural. Architectural, is that a word? Architect. Builder. Architectural.
Yeah.
Yep, all right, architectural language. The imagery is of a stonemason. All right, and there's a stonemason, and if someone says, hey, I want you to build me a house, and the stonemason goes, you've come to the right man. I am a stonemason. And then what he does is he grabs a bunch of stones, and he just kind of chucks them. And he throws them into a big pile, and he goes, there's your house. Bad stonemason. This idea here of, look at it again, being fitted and held together. It's the imagery that the stonemason, he fits all of these stones together. And that it's skillful, that it's careful, it's deliberate, it's not just some haphazard thing. And Paul goes, whenever Christ fit it all together, it was not just powerful, it wasn't just his choice, but you see his skill, you see his ability, you see the beauty and the artistry and how he connects and fits it all together. Both Jews and Gentiles, people from all walks of life, from all social and economic and societal and status and all these different cultural backgrounds. Paul goes, he takes believers, he takes all kinds of people, he saves them, he brings them together, and he does it in a way that's like a master builder. It's not haphazard. It's careful, it's deliberate. This happened because Christ is the cornerstone. And he has built a new humanity. He has built a spiritual, holy temple, and it proclaims all of these things and all of these things over here. And not just that, look at the last phrase. Being fitted and held together by what every joint supplies, according to the proper working of each individual part. So he goes, look, every part needs to come together. Every part can come together. And when it does come together, it causes the growth of the body for the building up of itself in love. That phrase, in love, is so key. And you need to write that down. You need to circle it. You need to star it. You need to highlight it. Put more stars around it. Paul goes, all of this needs to be saturated in love. All of this needs to be saturated in love. Why does it need to be saturated in love? Turn back really quick. What time is it? That's okay. Turn back really quick to Ephesians 2. Look at it. Why does all of this need to be saturated in love? That's the question really quick. Look at Ephesians 2, verse 4. But God, being rich in mercy, because of his great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead in our transgressions, made us alive together with Christ. By grace you have been saved. Whenever this person and your elders and your deacons and your small group leader loves you, and whenever you take your spiritual gifts and whenever you love others, and whenever you are united with other people and you're walking worthy, you now display the love that God used to save you. You now display the same love that saved you. That is the power of this. Whenever we love one another, whenever we're united as a youth group and you just put petty things aside, or you work on reconciling with somebody else in the youth group, we display to the world the riches. And we display to the world the beauty and the power of God's love for us. This changes everything. And this must change us. We must grow out of being a child. We must grow up into the image of Christ and display that we become like a trophy and display all of God's power, his magnificence, his glory, and that he really does get all the glory in the end. And so it begins here with you growing out and with us growing up. All right.